Yes, Switzerland 2003, a nation basking in the warm glow of summer with just the hint of an alpine breeze. It's perfect cycling conditions for the launch of the 67th Tour de Suisse. Spectators gathering for 10 days now in June to witness the exploits of 136 riders from over 20 nations, all seeking to take home the final yellow jersey. The route too, a starting point in Egerkinga. The riders face a challenging tour with no fewer than 8 high-altitude alpine passes and a journey of 1,447 kilometres to Aro and the end of the final stage. So the traditional start to the Tour de Suisse is the prologue time trial, and it took place in the beautiful town of Egerkinga. It was a 5.7 kilometre event against the watch, taking the riders to Oberbutt-Zittern, where they looped back on themselves before returning to Egerkinga. With its tortuous route in the first 3 kilometres, the opening stage was deemed to be a more challenging event than usual, and a favourable course for the strong riders. Among the favourites for the yellow jersey on day one was the young Swiss Fabian Cancellara. He rides for Fassa Bortolo and was already winner of the prologue in the recent Tour de Romandie. However, the Swiss Tour remained a big challenge. And riding for Gerolsteiner, the German champion in the individual time trial and the German runner-up in the road race, Uwe Peschel, was also expected to shine at this year's Tour de Suisse. But one must say Uwe Peschel, who is a specialist at the race against the watch, was rather disappointed with the ride here. And the mountain specialist, Italy's Francesco Casagrande, was a strong contender for the final yellow jersey. A winner of major stage races such as Tirreno Adriatico, the Tour of the Mediterranean, as well as the Tour de Suisse back in 1999, Casagrande started as a real hot favourite, while the leader of the Telecom team, Alexander Vinokurov from Kazakhstan, was another man to watch. The biggest win of his career to date, 2 consecutive victories in the Paris-Nice race 2002 and 3. Victory here would certainly boost his confidence for the Tour de France. And a lot was also expected of Team Bianchi's new captain, Jan Ullrich. With Lance Armstrong, the 4-time winner of the Tour de France, choosing the Dauphiné Libre as his build-up to the Tour, Ullrich now had an opportunity to shine here and remove any lingering doubts about his form. The reigning Tour de Suisse champion, Alex Zülle. With his Phonak team failing to qualify for the Tour de France for a second year, a win here now would go some way to boosting team pride at least. Alex was ready. Well, the winner of the prologue in 2002, could Alex Zülle match this performance with a second win now? Just over an hour now into the prologue, Phonak's Juan Carlos Dominguez, winner of the prologue in last year's Tour of Italy, was on the home run, looking to better the time set by Lori Oos of Estonia. His time, 8:51.63, took the lead by 29/100ths of a second. At the start line, riding for FrancaisDeJeux.com, Frenchman Sandy Cazard. But when he arrived at the finish, he could only manage 12th place, 9:7.24. A teammate to Carlos Dominguez, Phonak's Oscar Pereiro. Well, he rode an excellent prologue, which was something of a surprise to everybody. He came home in a time of 8 minutes and 48 seconds. Now, this was the time to beat for Uwe Peschel as he approached the home straight almost 2 hours into the event. His time, 8:57.97, only 9th. Out on the course, and with just 4 riders to go, Fabian Cancellara raised the bar with a very impressive 8 minutes 46 seconds. With McGee, Ullrich, O'Grady and Scanlon all failing to make an impression on Cancellara's lead, it was all down to Alex Zülle. But despite a strong sprint finish, the reigning champion could eventually take only 4th place. His time would be 8 minutes and 50 seconds. But with 3 Phonak riders finishing in the top 5, there was still something for their captain to celebrate. After all, this was Switzerland, and Zülle was Swiss. So, with a popular win for the young Swiss rider Cancellara, Pereiro's second place in the prologue surprised many, and Jan Ullrich only managed 13th place, but it was early days. Well, we asked Cancellara whether he found the race particularly tough, and he said the most difficult thing was first of all the heat. The route itself was also difficult, with the incline in the beginning and then the headwind towards the finish. But I think my speciality is racing against time, and the prologue, as the spectators helped me, won it for me today. So Cancellara took the yellow jersey after the prologue, but with the small time differences between the leading riders, the Fassa Bortolo team would need to ride a strong tactical race on day 2 to hold on to their gains. The opening first full day of racing and the breathtaking Swiss countryside, and yet another glorious day in the Tour de Suisse. This opening road stage from Ergekinge to Le Locre was quite a long way of 163 kilometres, and it was far from flat, although they were all talking it would be a race for the sprinters. On the way, they would pass through Saint-Bray and on through La Chaux-de-Fonds before reaching a finishing circuit which would take them through the finishing line and then back to the finish in Le Locre. A chance to look at the contours revealed quite a hilly route, flat at the beginning, but once they reached the finishing town, they would complete a circuit and it would prove decisive. As always, there was plenty of attacks right from the gun trying to establish an early breakaway, but the riders were extremely vigilant and they kept a tight control of the race. But throughout the opening kilometres, the peloton were vigilant and they reeled everybody in. The first significant attack was made by the Kazakh rider Sergei Yakovlev of the Team Telecom and Kevin Holtzmans of Quickstep on the left. They broke clear of the peloton with under 57 kilometres to go. Race leader in yellow, Cancellara, marshalled his Fassa Bortolo team to the front, but although they kept the pace high, they were not closing in. With the peloton piling on the pressure though, Yakovlev's lead began to diminish. He was the sole survivor at the front now. And eventually he was caught by Alexander Moos, Van Grulen and Sandy Kazar. The four riders worked well together to hold off the chasing field. There was a chance they could make it. But sensing his lead was in jeopardy, Cancellara picked up some bonus sprint points to bolster his position in the overall classification. The young man was not going to give up his yellow jersey, at least without a fight. In the closing stages, Team Lotto Domo found an ally though in the Crédit Agricole team. Together they tried to keep the peloton on the chase. However, all of their efforts came to nothing as the fast downhill approach into Le Locre precipitated a string of attacks. This was Julian Dean, the New Zealand rider on the Danish CSC team. He built up a good lead. It looked good for the sprinter, but his legs failed him. Fassa Bortolo's Sergei Ivanov, though, rose to the challenge, but Alexander Vinokurov caught him, and together they fought out the sprint finish. All of a sudden, this was no longer a stage for the sprinters, and try as he might, Ivanov had no answer to Sergei Vinokurov. In a final lunge, he crossed the line first. So Vinokurov won the stage in the same time as Ivanov, with the best of the rest being Miguel Angel Perdiguero 2 seconds back and Dario Figo in fourth. After his win, Vinokurov was mindful of the challenges that lay ahead. And he said, well, primarily the Tour de Suisse is a preparation for the Tour de France. I only want to find my rhythm for that event. Well, today saw that. The finish arrival was perfect for me. So I said I will try to take my chance and win a stage, and I'm very happy. My form is coming. I'm extremely happy that I'm in such good physical condition. At the end of the first stage, Vinokurov was the race leader now, with Australia's Bradley McGee doing enough work in the sprints to push Pereiro into third, just ahead of Cancellara, who'd slipped to fourth. In the other competitions, the early leaders, Vinokurov was points and Guerini was the king of the mountains. Cancellara was still the sprint leader. Phonak held the team lead. On to day 3 now, and the second start of stage 2 of the Tour de Suisse. Today, the riders would leave at Merton and travel 175 kilometres, following a route from Merton to Nyon and along the banks of Lake Geneva. This was a very picturesque route, but then again, they all were in a beautiful country like Switzerland. The riders themselves faced 2 fourth category climbs and 2 bonus sprints along the way. It was a relatively flat day and one of the easiest and favoured the sprinters. With his high position in the general classification and strong sprinting skills, Bradley McGee was a favourite to win the second stage. Australia's Robin McEwen, though, was very much in the running. Vinokurov had shown impressive form so far and would be tough to beat today as well. Another man to watch out for will be the Swiss champion Alexander Moos. He was riding on home soil. And once again, it was a beautiful day with clear skies as the riders set off from Merton. At the 45 kilometres mark, the young riders Mark Scanlon of Ireland and Jurgen van Goelen launched an attack and developed a lead of 7 minutes 25 seconds after 90 kilometres. The peloton had not yet responded. And with just over 26 kilometres to go, Scanlon and Van Goelen were in trouble. Scanlon struggled now to recover from the Category 4 climb at Genolier and struggled to stay with Van Goelen. The peloton continued their chase. So, with just under 26 kilometres to go, Van Goelen was on his own now. However, by the 16-kilometre mark, his lead over the peloton had plummeted to 1 minute 14 seconds. Shortly afterwards, Hans de Klerk of the Lotto Domo team led the main field past Scanlon. With Scanlon now back in the pack, the peloton continued their pursuit of Van Goelen. The Belgian made a valiant effort to hang on to his lead and hopefully gain the biggest victory of his career. But this was not to be Van Goelen's day. Having spent 117 kilometres in the lead, they eventually caught him just 8 kilometres short of the line. But despite the disappointment, Van Goelen still managed a smile and a wave. Well, the field have wiped out the day's breakaways now, and it's all come down to the sprinters. This is what they've been looking for. The Lotto riders now of Robbie McEwen have done their best to launch him at the finish now. He's in a brilliant position here. McEwen now digging deep. If he wins this, it'll be his first ever in the Tour of Switzerland. He gets it on the line. So the man who got the silver medal in the World Championships last year is the winner, and he will be delighted with that. Yes, Robin McEwen got the victory in the same time as the New Zealand rider Julian Dean and Stuart O'Grady. It was a 1-2-3 for the men from Down Under.
It was a tough sprint. It was a very difficult stage. It wasn't flat, and it was also very fast because the 2 guys in front were riding very strong. And but at the end, the sprinters teams got together to make a nice sprint. It was a little bit difficult because of the headwind in the finish, but my teammates were able to pull the sprint in the last kilometre, and I could finish it off perfectly. So it's very nice.
Well, it always is when you're a sprinter and you're on winning form. McEwen looking forward to the Tour de France, and so too Alexander Vinokurov, because he kept his lead, but only just by 3 seconds over Bradley McGee and 10 over Oscar Pereiro. It was still very tight at the top. But the yellow jersey on the shoulders of Vinokurov, the man who said he hasn't come here to win this race, he was still there, very much indeed. McEwen was the points leader, Van Goelen deservedly the king of the mountains. Still not a rain cloud in sight, the third stage of the Tour from Nyon to Saas-Fee presented the first opportunity for the climbers now to shine in this year's Tour de Suisse. The longest stage of the race so far at 205 kilometres. The third stage was also the first real challenge now for the climbers to show their strength and their endurance. This was going to be a tough day as the riders turned their backs on Lake Le Mans, or as we call it, Lake Geneva. After 185 kilometres, the riders faced a 20-kilometre climb which would take them up towards the finish. It would be a big test for the yellow jersey of Alexander Vinokurov. Other riders too wanted to do well. Zuller was only lying in 7th place overall. He was the defending champion, while Jan Ullrich, well, would this be a chance for him to shine? 3 days into the Tour, and there was still everything in the big peloton to play for. Peter Waerts, the first decisive break maker, came after 18 kilometres. The Belgian went on the attack and rode hard to establish a substantial lead. The peloton didn't seem interested in rising to his challenge. The heat of the Swiss summer was taking its toll on the riders as they struggled to keep cool in the soaring temperatures. This was turning out to be one of the hottest tours for years. Out in front, Waerts pressed on alone. It was anyone's guess how this was going to end. He was, however, still building a big lead, but his strength was beginning to leave him. The climb up towards the finish was taking its toll. With 15 kilometres to go, Paolo Bettini of the Quick-Step team, recovering from injury, tried his luck and had a 30-second advantage in the chase. Before too long, though, the Phonak and Bianchi teams changed gear and brought him back into the fold. 5 kilometres now from the finish, Waerts' lead was down to 2 minutes 17 seconds, and he was clearly tired, but this was an heroic effort. As the end approached, Vinokurov positioned his team to execute their final strategy. However, it was Francesco Casagrande who took the initiative and dared the peloton to follow him. Casagrande, who had abandoned the Giro d'Italia because of sickness, seemed to be refining his form here, and the riders were quickly to counter his move. Kim Kirchen there from Fassa Bortolo, the yellow jersey himself, Vinokurov. Alexander Vinokurov has said all along he hadn't wanted to win this race. It was always preparation for the Tour de France, but he was still on the attack as they passed the brave man of the day, Peter Waerts. He was wiped out 2.5 kilometres from the finish after a day-long attack, and the man now pushing on to victory was none other than Francesco Casagrande. There is now something of panic behind as 3 team members of Fassa Bortolo and the yellow jersey of Vinokurov tried to limit their losses to Francesco Casagrande. This would be a great victory for Casagrande, clearly recovered now from his sickness in the Giro d'Italia. And in the chase group behind, Kim Kirchen had just stolen a lead, the ever-improving rider from Luxembourg. But the rider in yellow was fighting to retain the race lead. Vinokurov was battling for seconds. So the stage result, Casagrande had won by 13 seconds over Kirchen, 18 over Vinokurov and Sven Montgomery of the Fassa Bortolo team. It was going to be tight. Nonetheless, it was a great result for Francesco Casagrande. Yes, he said, thank you for the compliments. I knew it was going to be a tough finish. I got my teammates to close and my Lampre team rode brilliantly. I'm very grateful to them for having done a great job. I tried my best during the final 3 kilometres and it all went well. So after the third stage, Vinokurov had just managed to hang on to the overall lead, but only by 6 seconds over Casagrande, who was now up to second, and Bradley McGee was dropping down to third. So Casagrande had met the big challenge of the mountains early on, while Vinokurov had held on to his lead, but only just. Vinokurov was also the leader in the points, while Casagrande was the new leader in the mountains. The Tour de Suisse was now on its halfway stage in days at least. This was now day 5 of the 10-day event. And this 4th stage, the riders headed away from Visp to the village of Lauzon in the Italian-speaking Ticino canton. The course was particularly demanding, presenting very difficult technical challenges to the field. It would be a day for the mountain climbers to again stretch their legs. During their 168-kilometre journey, the riders would travel through the highest mountain passes of the race, including the Newfoundland Pass at 2,478 metres. Conditions were punishing, and shortly into the race, Vinokurov had taken a tumble, but his teammates rallied around him and brought him back to the pack. While he was preoccupied, there was a concerted attack coming from the Frenchman Sandy Cazard, who was responding to a break from Filippo Simone in the striking tiger skin strip. This lead was eroded in the climb by Paolo Bettini and Swen Cahoot, who were just 5:39 behind the two of them as they emerged from the Newfound Pass climb. The peloton increased its pace and they absorbed Bettini and Cahoot near Precito. Members of the CSC team took their turn at the front of the peloton to increase the field's momentum and reduce the lead held by Kazar and Simone. The Australian Bradley McGee was having an inspired day and was amongst the first to catch up with the lead pair. And Stefan Vesserman of Team Telecom. He worked hard for Vinokurov and his fellow team members, helping to sustain the high chase. Getting now towards the finish, and Alex Zula had also manoeuvred himself into a strategic position. By the 14 kilometres mark, Kazar, needing to cross the finishing line 2:20 ahead of Vinokurov to become the race leader, was now 3:33 to the good. Well, this is going to be an amazing finish now, because these two riders, they appear to be running away with the day, and for some strange reason, Simone has stopped working. Kazar cannot understand it. He sat behind him for these last few kilometres, and now Sandy Kazar knows he is doomed here, because the peloton is coming and Vinokurov is going to save that yellow jersey. This is the lead out for the finish now, and Sandy Kazar is having none of it. He's going to have another dig for the line here as he starts to chase down a late breakaway. This is an interesting move indeed. At 150 metres to go, there is going to be no yellow jersey for Sandy Kazar. The peloton is snapping at his heels now, but Kazar somewhere has found the strength to get round Kim Kirshen, who thought he had won the stage. Kirshen cannot believe that. Just take a look at that again now. This is the Luxembourg rider. At this point, he believed he had won it, and I must say I thought he had. He's getting ready to celebrate, but he should have looked to his right. Watch the wheel. On the line, Kazar has stolen the day. He deserved that. Just look at the face of Kim Kirshen. He knows he has lost it, and the photo finish confirms that. And indeed he had. In the same time, though, as Sandy Kazar, was Stuart O'Grady and Robin McEwen and Julian Dean. The sprinters almost had their day. But Sandy Kazar had stolen it. And he says here, well, as far as 10 kilometres from the finish, I thought we'd both arrive together. But from then on, Simone wouldn't take his lead, and I didn't know what to do. I figured I should keep on cycling hard and not to lose too much time while producing as little effort as possible. 2 kilometres to the finish and I had a cramp attack, but he didn't know that. If he had placed an attack then, I think I would have lost. I took a deep breath, I felt good, and it all went well. Well, I think we agree with that. So Sandy Kazar got a stage win for the French, especially for his team, and he would certainly be remembered for the great win. While Alexander Vinokurov saved the day, just 6 seconds his lead over Francesco Casagrande and 12 over Brad McGee. Kirshen was there too. Well, for a man who didn't want to lead the Tour, he was doing pretty well, because although he'd lost his lead in the points to Robin McEwen, he was still leading the race. Simeone was king of the mountains. The southeastern corner of Switzerland was now the location for the 5th stage of the event, a ride of 178 kilometres. The race would start rather gently down in the far corner at Ascona, but right in the middle was the towering climb of the San Bernardino Pass, and then the riders would make a long way for the journey down to La Punt. From the point of view of a mountain climber, the San Bernardino was perhaps too early on in the stage, but the pass towards the end could be very decisive, 2,300 metres. The 5th stage got off to a gentle start, but then soon began the climb of the San Bernardino, where a group of 8 riders forced themselves clear. As the climb progressed, the group whittled down to 5, and they were namely Daniel Schneider, Paolo Bettini, Stefan Schreck, Eric Leblanchet and Massimo Giunti. However, the strain of the 2,066 metres climb to the summit of the San Bernardino splintered the group even more. and soon the lead group was reduced to just Paolo Bettini and Daniel Schneider. Bettini tried to get away from Schneider, but the tenacious Swiss had no intention of being left behind. Paolo Bettini was recovering from a serious accident in April. He was showing good form. But once again, Casagrande had led an attack in the mountains, and Alexander Vinokurov was the only one who could seem to answer him. As the climb progressed, soon right behind came the maillot jaune, the yellow jersey of Vinokurov, but doing the charging was Francesco Casagrande. Schneider and Bettini were easily overtaken, but they refused to admit defeat and did their utmost to cling on to the high speed. It soon became clear that the peloton was beginning to struggle to catch up with the leaders. As Casagrande again accelerated away from Vinokurov, who this time didn't seem to have an answer. As Casagrande sped away, the tall leader formed a chase group. He was still with Bettini and Schneider. Casagrande himself sustained a lead. Vinokurov pursued him on the descent. The fans were out in force, cheering once more Francesco Casagrande to the finishing line. He was about to win his second stage. He was proving to be quite a champion of the mountains of this year's Tour de Suisse. Casagrande, showing all the old form which once gave him second in the Tour of Italy, wins the stage. Alexander Vinokurov this time would not keep his leader's yellow jersey. While behind, the field were very seriously split. So the fifth stage ended with Casagrande winning ahead of Alexander Vinokurov and Alexander Moos taking third. Kim Kirchen and Sandy Kazar also featured in the top 10. But this win meant everything because Casagrande was now the new leader of the Tour. He was leading the race by 1 minute and 25 seconds over Moos, but just only 37 seconds over his arch-rival Alexander Vinokurov. In the other events, Vinu points and Casagrande, of course, consolidating in the mountains. The sixth stage of the Tour de Suisse was located in the town of Silvaplana in the heart of the Swiss Alps. And this was to be a veritable circuit of the Alps. It was the shortest stage on the road, that is, apart from the time trials, and the riders knew that short stages when you're in the high mountains can be extremely difficult. Here's a little journey around the topography of the race route. And at the start, the riders stayed down in the valley, but it certainly wasn't to stay that way for the rest of the day. So far, Francesco Casagrande had proven with 2 wins in the mountains he was really on good climbing form. But with only 2 minutes covering the top 3 or 4 riders, he knew too he could not afford to make any mistakes. Over the valleys, and then every time you dropped into a valley, you simply had to climb out of them. Switzerland is a beautiful country, unless of course you are a long-distance marathon road racing cyclist. Then you don't look at the countryside, you just look at the roads in front of you. And once you're around this circuit of the Alps, you head back down to the same start and finish point, and it will be there where the race would be decided. With the time trial still to come, Vinokurov knew if he could hang on to Casagrande and keep his losses at no more than what they already were, then he could still win this race in the time trial. And do you think Casagrande didn't know that? So Francesco Casagrande, the rider to beat, now resplendent as he set off in his leader's yellow jersey. The peloton were again in a relaxed mood beneath a very hot sunshine, riders enjoying their days out. This so far had been a brilliant Tour de Suisse, although there were many riders dropping out because of the heat. What better place, though, than the heart of the peloton to try some jokes? But after the gentle roll away, the action is soon extremely serious. A breakaway forming consisting of former world champion Oscar Cammerzind, Salvatore Camesso, Aitor Garmendia, Serwin Kowat, Stefan Vesserman, Marcus Zerberg and Bradley McGee, and they led for much of the race. At the head of the peloton, Vinokurov wasn't far away, neither too was Casagrande in his yellow jersey. At the early stages though, on the Julia Pass, Zeberg had launched a one-man war on the slopes and had gone clear on his own. Phonak were having a good tour despite the poor form of Alex Zula. Oscar Pereiro was stepping it up a gear now in hot pursuit of Marcus Zeberg. Behind, the peloton was giving chase, but it was Pereiro who was the first to catch up with Marcus Zeberg. Oscar Pereiro was now maintaining a lead on his own. He was now focused on winning the stage. While the Spanish rider attacked solo, the peloton were also wiping out Marcus Zeberg. The hills continued to steepen as Pereiro was now over the top and descending at 70 kilometers an hour down towards the base. He was riding like the wind, a rider who's only in fact won 2 races in his career. Back in the main field, determined to get that yellow jersey back, Vinokurov was forcing his team to chase. Casagrande was now being played at his own game. Out in front, Pereiro approached the home run. He now had a clear shot at winning the stage. Behind, though, there was a group forming comprising of Giuseppe Guarini, Kim Kirchen, Valjevic, Casagrande and Vinokurov, among others. But it was all too late to spoil the day for the Phonak rider from Spain, Oscar Pereiro. And in the race for second place on the climb, Jan Ullrich threw down the gauntlet for the Tour de France, as the race was swept up by Kim Kirchen in third. So Pereiro got the victory by just 74 seconds over Jan Ullrich and 77 seconds over Kirchen, Moose, Vinokurov, Sozenka and the rest. This was an excellent win for Pereiro and had helped boost his overall classification position as well. He was now up to 8th. The yellow jersey had stayed on the shoulders of Casagrande. Vinokurov was 37 seconds back. Casagrande then had answered all of the attacks thrown at him from Vinokurov. He had good reason to smile. In the other classifications, Vinokurov still led on points, and Casagrande was still the king of the mountains. With 3 days to go, the Tour de Suisse was now starting in Savagnin for stage number 7. Only 96 rides were left in this race for the longest stage of the competition from Savagnin to Oberstaufen in Germany. It was going just across the borders, and on the way the riders would pass through Trubach and Hittersau. At 231 kilometres of relatively flat roads, this 7th stage was considered to be a welcome relief for the sprinters. Tobias Steinhauser. With the tour ending in Germany, the country's nationals will be on their guard. Jan Ullrich was also a strong favourite. The distance of the stage, though, combined with the glaring sunshine and the oppressive heat, reduced the number of breaks in the opening stages. Then, a break finally came at the 68th kilometre. Yakovlev, Schneider, Leblanchet, De Gank, Belly and Zeberg had all left the main field to open a gap of over 6 minutes. The lead was reduced over the next 50 kilometres, but the peloton hadn't bothered to really attack, as the major teams had members in the breakaway. With 14 kilometres to go, Yakovlev launched an attack, quickly moving a few seconds ahead of Zeberg and Schneider as the summit of the climb approached. The peloton remained basically unconcerned. Nobody ahead was affecting the destiny of the yellow jersey. With the sun still beating down on his back, Yakovlev drew on all of his resources to maintain his speed under the very oppressive conditions. Just behind him, Zeberg, Schneider and De Gank gave chase. but Yakovlev extended his lead with surprising ease. Sergei Yakovlev, a training partner of his team captain Alexander Vinokurov, free to win the stage, and he hasn't won many races in a 4-year career, but he made the most of this. The 7th win of his career since turning pro back in 1999. It would also probably assure him of a place in the Tour de France team. Then came the battle for second place, and it was a tight sprint, but easily taken out by the hard-working Markus Zerberg, just ahead of De Gank. None of these riders, though, were affecting the yellow jersey competition, so while they were free to race, the other two riders, Casagrande and Vinokurov, finished locked together in the same time. So the win to Sergei Yakovlev, 1 minute and 2 seconds in the end, ahead of Markus Zerberg, De Gank and Schneider. And when Yakovlev was asked whether he placed his personal ambitions above his team, no, he said, because my team director explained that I shouldn't help in the lead group because there was one rider only 8 minutes behind in the rankings, and he could be dangerous. So I just followed the wheels, and towards the end, when the group got close to the finish and we had a lead of just a minute over the chasers, I went on my own to try and get the stage victory for the team. For the stage, of course, and yes, indeed, that's what he did, and he's a personal friend of Alexander Vinokurov anyway. Vinokurov was still there in second place, 37 seconds, still intact, but still behind Francesco Casagrande. Alexander Moose was third. Casagrande saying here, well, today my teammates did work really hard and I have to thank them. They did a great job. They went flat out for more than 200 kilometres and they were great. The hill on the final stage won't be particularly difficult, but I wasn't challenged anyway and I responded well. Let's see tomorrow. Well, Casagrande is 32 years of age and a professional now for 11 years. He's seen it all before and he knows exactly what tomorrow will bring. He's saying here about the time trial because he is only holding a 37-second advantage over Vinokurov. It'll be tight. Vinokurov remained the leader on points. Casagrande still the leader also in the mountains. Although it was only the penultimate stage of the Tour, this 8th stage in Gossau was expected now to decide the outcome of the race. It was a 33 kilometres time trial, a race of truth. The 8th stage would be far more demanding than the prologue time trial, which was only 5.7 kilometres. This would be the big decisive move and a nervous day for all of the riders. The route itself was flat but tough, with its narrow, undulating roads. It was quite a technical route. It was seen as a potential turning point in the battle between Casagrande on the left and Alexander Vinokurov on the right. One of those two riders knew that with a good ride today, they would run out the winner of the Tour de Suisse tomorrow. About an hour into the event, Uwe Peschel had taken the lead from the prologue winner, Fabian Cancellara. He crossed the line with a time of 42 minutes and 44 seconds. Next man of note, and third in the prologue, Bradley McGee of Australia. He was expected to put in a very good time. And there was the breakaway man of a few days back, Van Hoolen, already on course and clocking very good times. While back at the start house, Alex Zülle. He'd come fourth in the prologue and was now looking to improve on that performance. He had all of the home support. As Van Gulm approached the home run, he was now chasing Rick Verbrugge's time of 44 minutes, 46.61 seconds. He managed to beat it and he went into fourth place as he crossed the line. A very good effort by the Belgian rider. The crowd were expecting, though, a very good time from Alex Zülle. He was pushing hard, driving himself to better Peschel's lead time at the checkpoints. While heading up for the finish, it was Bradley McGee. Just when it seemed that Peschel's time couldn't be beaten, McGee came up with the goods, 42:20.77. He was number one. Alexander Vinokurov was already on the course now, striving to cut into Casagrande's slim advantage of 37 seconds. Casagrande would start behind him. And there he was in the start house, now ready and determined to keep his lead in the yellow jersey. Yet he knew he wasn't a great time trial rider. Well, Jan Ullrich has won a few time trials in his career and was having a good race as he managed now to improve on Sosenko's time. Out on course, Alexander Vinokurov was setting a fast pace. He'd done so right from the start. He'd now put as much pressure as possible on Francesco Casagrande to respond. And for a while, the competitive Italian did manage to keep the gap between him and Vinokurov to a minimum. But as the race progressed, it soon became clear that the man in the yellow jersey was slipping. Casagrande was going out of the leader's jersey in favour of Alexander Vinokurov. And once again, Francesco Casagrande was showing he had still not learned the art of riding a time trial. Meanwhile, Jan Ullrich, as he approaches the home run, he was now chasing Tobias Steinhauser's time for a third-place finish. His time of 43:11 was good enough to do the job. As he approached the finishing line, Vinokurov now was pushing himself to the limit. Linked to the following car by race radio, he knew he was riding into a race lead. And you don't need a better inspiration than that. The crowd was shouting him home towards the line. And as he approached it, he would finish with a time of 43:33.39, and he would move into fifth place on the day. Francesco Casagrande would equally know he was losing the Tour de Suisse. He was now off the pace and suffering from the heat. Rocking from side to side as he approached the finishing line, Casagrande would finish 52 seconds slower than Alexander Vinokurov. He would take only 15th place. He would lose the race lead by just 15 seconds. He was now second overall. And the man to profit, Alexander Vinokurov. Having a wonderful season, having already won Paris-Nice and the classic Amstel Gold Race this year, he was now poised for victory in the Tour de Suisse. The pace had taken its toll on Francesco Casagrande, who was struggling to recover. He had only time to reflect as we now look at the stage results. Bradley McGee of Australia had got the stage win ahead of Uwe Peschel, and third place Jan Ullrich, while Oscar Pereira was fourth. For Bradley McGee from Sydney, this was a welcome return to the top and augured well for the Tour de France for him as well. The overall classification had changed. Vinokurov was now back in yellow, 15 seconds ahead of Casagrande. Giuseppe Guerini was in third. Well, for a man that said he'd come here not to win the race, he'd done a pretty good job at winning the race. Yes, Alexander Vinokurov really had ridden with a plan. Yes, he said, I wanted to start very quickly and catch up the deficit right away, thinking that maybe it would hurt Casagrande morally. When I say that I had already taken 46 seconds, I then decided to give it everything. It's true that for a while we did remain fairly even, but soon afterwards it was all in the head. And you know, whoever gives his best will always win. I did give my maximum effort, and in the last kilometre it was really tough, but my mental approach was up for the effort. I wanted to take the jersey back. And he's still likely to do the double too, because Vinokurov's still leading in the points while Casagrande remained the king of the mountains. So to the final day of the Tour de Switzerland, the calm perhaps after the storm, because the final places were thought to have been decided in that time trial. Well, were they? This was now the final day, taking the riders from Staffa to the finishing town of Aro. It was not really expected to yield any major upsets in the general classification, but you never know. You must always stay on your guard. Technically, this was a race now for the sprinters, but there weren't many sprinters left. Robbie McEwen, for example, had been eliminated in the mountains, and he wasn't too happy with that decision. The 152 kilometres journey was relatively flat and favoured the sprinters. The day started somewhat controversially. There was no Francesco Casagrande in the race. Although he'd come down to the start, he hadn't taken to his bicycle. He was said to be ill with a form of dysentery. Vinokourov and the Telecom team had taken control at the front of the peloton. Van Geulen was among the riders ready to race at the front and try for a stage win. This young man was turning out to be quite a talent. And notably too, amongst the numerous attacks was one from the Australian Matthew Wilson. Wilson still hoping for a place on his team in the Tour de France. Alexander Vinoukourov's Telecom team, though, they decided to assert themselves and keep control of the big pack. They were trying to deter any breakaway moves. And this would certainly favour the sprinters. Even so, Matthew Wilson did manage to maintain a significant lead over the peloton before they eventually joined up. Even with Casagrande out of the race, Vinokourov wasn't taking any chances. He organised his team to outmanoeuvre anyone with the slightest hope of taking his yellow jersey. Brad McGee managed to create a lead of several minutes, though, before it all became just a little bit too much.
Well, this is Bradley McGee. He really has put in a brave attack here, and that's born of the confidence of his time trial victory. But it's not going to work for him because the peloton have closed in. Now, the sprinters have had very little out of this year's race. Robbie McEwen very early on, and he's no longer in the event, and they've caught McGee and put him back in the pack here. He lifts his head, checks over his shoulder. He's going to see virtually the whole field coming around this corner, and it's a little tricky left-hander as well. Now, McGee has set this up, you know, in many ways because his team probably possesses now the fastest sprinter, and that is Baden Cook. But look at this, the yellow jersey himself. Now, that is confidence for you. Alexander Vinokourov is going to win this race in style. He's trying to win the final stage, but they've got him just. There's a small group of riders latched on there to his back wheel. But I thought for a moment the yellow jersey was going to run out the winner of the final stage as well. But the sprinters are on him now. He's still got the strength to kick again, but that's Baden Cook has gone through on the inside. So Bradley McGee's day wasn't wasted at all because his teammate Cook has taken it out. Baden Cook gets the victory. But Alexander Vinokourov will win the Tour of Switzerland. So Australia have had a great tour in many ways here with stage wins for McEwen, Cook and indeed Bradley McGee.
Yes, indeed, the Australians had enjoyed the tour, but the man who had enjoyed it most, I suppose, was Vinokourov. This is the stage result. All in the same time, the first 6 riders, the sprinters at last seeing the front of the race. With Alexander Vinokourov, the man in charge. He wins the event by 1 minute and 14 seconds by Giuseppe Guerini, also of Telecom, climbing up into second place in the end. Oscar Pereiro had won a stage and a great result in third place for him. And Kim Kirschen, a Luxembourg rider, again showing what an improving man he is, taking the 4th place finish. Alexander Vinokourov saying here, yes, of course I knew I'd won the general ranking when I finished. It was the last kilometre and I still had a little bit left, so I tried to steal the final stage as well. I started off well but couldn't finish it off. It's okay though. I think we did well in this year's Tour de Suisse. I won and I'm happy with my form. Now I'm going to rest a little and prepare for the Tour de France, and who can blame him for that? On the winner's podium though, a sprinter at last who's expected to do well in the Tour de France, Baden Cook, while this man here is hoping he will challenge Lance Armstrong, who also won this race a couple of years ago. Vinokurov is having a great season. The flowers distributed, Pereiro on the right, Giuseppe Guarini, a teammate indeed of Vinokurov, on the left. A 1-2 to Team Telecom. Top sprinter was Daniel Snyder of Phonak, while Filippo Simeoni, he won the King of the Mountains. And Fassa Bortolo took the team prize, and they were really a very strong team here. And as we confirm those rankings, interesting to note too that Alexander Vinokurov did the double. He won the yellow jersey and the points leader competition. So as the crowd go home, rest assured they've seen some of the stars of the upcoming Tour de France. Hope you've enjoyed the coverage. Goodbye.